Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Nature Knowledge for April. I'm excited to have you all here today. I am Dr. Shelly Johnson. I'm State Specialized Agent in Natural Resources with IFAS Extension. And I've been hosting this program now for a year. Actually, I think this is our 1-year anniversary. So I'm glad to see everyone here. We've had a good following throughout the last year, and I expect this program will continue. So please look forward to this program each month and let me know if you have other suggestions for programs. As a lot of you saw, we had a question on the screen. How many nectar plants have been identified for the adult Atala butterfly? I've been looking at the chat. Oh, can you hear me? No? Yes.
Yes, I was just giving them the answer.
Okay, someone said I appeared to be on mute. So whoever that is, you must not have your sound on. Okay, so I'm glad that people can hear me. So yeah, a lot of you said 1, and then I think you saw that you had some thought process going through of like, oh wait, nectar plants, so according to this EDIS, which I'll drop in the chat for you if you want to look at it later, they list 19, so at least there's quite a few available for nectar specifically, not maybe for other aspects of the life cycle of the butterfly. So just a couple introductory things. You are muted if you didn't notice, and you will stay muted for most of the program. Only people that will be able to unmute will be the people speaking, the host and myself, and the speaker. So purpose of that is that there will be probably quite a few of you on the program today, and just want to minimize background noise. So on that note, if you have questions throughout the program, go ahead and put them in the chat now that you know how to use the chat. Also, any other suggestions, go ahead and record anything in the chat. I do save that and I'll be able to look at it later as well. So we'll have time at the end for questions, and we'll go back and look for questions in the chat, but you can also post your questions once the presentation portion is over. We are recording this program. Let me make sure I'm recording. Yes. And we do post the links to the past programs online on the IFAS blog. That was linked in the confirmation email. So all the programs from the last year are there. And this program and the future programs will also be posted there. Also, we are on Facebook Live, so you can also watch the recording on the Florida Master Naturalist Program Facebook page if you want to go back and watch it again or share it with others. So the program for today for Nature Knowledge is the Florida Atala butterflies back from the Brink, and our speaker is going to present this topic today is Ken Gioeli. I think I said your name right. He's an extension agent in natural resources and environment. He's with IFAS Extension, and he's in St. Lucie County. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ken and let him tell us how we're supposed to say his name.
That's okay. Thanks, Shelly. It's a pleasure being able to join all of you today. So let's see here. I just need to reconfigure a little bit. So the Florida Atala butterfly, it is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And I try to bring my students out to see the Atala butterflies. So hopefully all of you are seeing my title screen here. So, and I have as my title, the Florida Atala butterfly back from the Brink. And then I have a question mark there. You know, are they back from the Brink? Are they completely, not at a threat to extinction? These are some of the things I want you to think about as I go through my presentation today. So this is the Florida Atala butterfly. We'll just get right to the chase with this. It is an absolutely beautiful, probably one of my most favorite butterflies that we have here in Florida. It can be characterized as having black satiny wings with an iridescent turquoise shimmer and a red abdomen. Very attractive little butterfly. To give you a little bit of scale, those are my fingers. I'm holding plant leaf that the butterfly had landed on. So as you can see, the butterfly's body is about the size of my thumbnail. You can also see in this photo, if you look real close, some of the scales that are on the wings of the butterfly, and you can really pick up each individual scale in the iridescence, that turquoise coloration is in the scales on these butterfly wings. The Florida Atala butterfly, Eumaeus Atala Poey, was originally described by the Cuban zoologist Felipe Poey. It's actually named after the Native American heroine of an 1801 French novella. And I'm not French, I don't speak French, but that's the name of the novella. And if you want to look it up, feel free to. I got this right off of Wikipedia. I know in Extension, we don't necessarily tell people to go to Wikipedia first, but sometimes you can glean some information that might be a little bit difficult to dig up elsewhere. So the Florida Atala butterfly was thought to be extinct from 1937 until about 1959. It was rediscovered and is now found in these locations, primarily in Southeast Florida. Now, we did have some pop up on the west coast of Florida, down in the Naples area, and I think that's mostly from people carrying this butterfly around. And that's one of the things that we've noticed is people find the butterflies and they move them from one site to the other. They're also found in the Grand Bahamas and down in Cuba. So in the Caribbean, they've kind of reestablished themselves to a limited extent. The Florida Natural Areas Inventory lists them as rare and vulnerable to extinction. And this is the exact wording from the Florida Natural Areas Inventory. It has the butterfly listed as S2, either very rare and local in Florida or found only locally in a restricted range or vulnerable to extinction from other factors. The factors being the loss of host plant, and the host plant is the coontie. The caterpillars must have that native coontie plant in order to survive. And this slide is progressing on its own here for some reason. This is the coontie plant and Zamia integrifolia. The butterflies will eat this plant, they'll eat the leaves, and they will impound the cycasin toxin in their bodies. And that's a form of predator avoidance. So they're actually gonna have that cycasin toxin in their bodies throughout their entire life cycle. And even to the eggs. So the caterpillars eat them, it goes to chrysalis, it goes to the adult, and then the eggs are laid, and even the eggs of the Atala butterflies are considered to be toxic from that cycasin. Now, this is the native host plant that contains that cycasin, but there are some other non-natives, like the cardboard plant, for example, that will contain that cycasin, but if they're given a preference, a choice, the Atala butterflies just won't eat it. They will go to the coontie plant, that Zamia integrifolia. They'll go to that almost 100% of the time. They'll prefer that over just about any other cycad that would contain that cycasin. This tends to be a fairly expensive plant in the landscape. And one of the issues that comes up is the issue of toxicity. People worry about, if their dogs are going to eat the cones that are on that. There have been some cases where there have been some poisonings of animals from eating those, the cones, the little fruit that are on these cycads. And if you ever have pets that eat it, just make sure you're giving them some medical attention as soon as possible because the effects are not pleasant at all and could actually lead to death. So, keep that in mind. If you have this coontie plant in your landscape, the potential is there for it to be harmful if you allow your pets access to it. But another thing is the landscapers will sometimes see these plants and they'll be chewed up by the Atala butterflies, the caterpillars, and they can strip these plants bare in a matter of no time. And the landscapers will very often get uncomfortable with that because let's face it, people don't like to see their plants eaten in a garden. So what they'll very often do is go and get the insecticides and insecticide the coontie plants. And unfortunately what happens is that will kill off the Atala butterfly caterpillars. So it's a matter of educating people, especially landscapers and homeowners and businesses that might have these plants in the landscape. If you have Atala butterfly caterpillars, you might want to consider keeping them don't treat them right away with the insecticides. And it's just a matter of learning, how to manage the coontie and how to manage your own behavior. The plants will very often get stripped bare. And what we'll learn in a minute is the Atala butterflies are in competition with each other. The caterpillars will literally be in competition with each other to strip these coontie plants bare. So this is the Atala life cycle. If we start where it says hatch, you'll see that it's going to be in that consumptive feeding stage for about a week and a half or so. So during that time, the caterpillar will be eating as much of that coontie, as much of the leaves as possible, and getting that cycasin toxin pounded in their bodies. And then they will go and chrysalis. And when they chrysalis, they all move to a couple of leaves, and they will form what we call aggregations. And I'll show you pictures of that in a minute. And then they will emerge out of their chrysalis in just about 2 weeks. And then you'll see the adult butterflies flying around, and then they're mating, and they will be ovipositing their eggs right back on the coontie plant again. So there are about 19 plants that can be considered nectar plants for the adult butterflies. But in Florida, really the only plant that we see in Florida that is good for the caterpillars, and keep in mind, we need these for the caterpillars, that is the coontie plant, that Zamia integrifolia. Now, we do consider this to be an ephemeral population, especially in my area. I'm in St. Lucie County on the southeast Florida coast here. We have them in what we consider ephemeral populations. They're a little bit more sustained when you get down into Broward and Miami-Dade and maybe even Palm Beach. And then you're also finding them a little bit further inland. Here in my area, we find them hugging the coast in the Indian River Lagoon. And what we mean by ephemeral is they have a tendency to come and go. So one year you might have Atala butterflies going through their life cycle, and you might have an overabundance of dozens, if not hundreds of them, the adults flying around, and all of your coontie plants getting eaten up. And then the next year or two, they just disappear. You don't see them again. And that's why we've referred to this as an ephemeral population. So this is what they look like. The eggs are in the top corner. These eggs have been hatched out, and they're usually found on the underside of the coontie plants, very small little dots. When they hatch out, you'll see the caterpillars. Usually they're, kind of moving along at the same place, and the caterpillars will be bright red with yellow dots. They look almost like gummy candy, if you can imagine, but a very, very toxic, poisonous gummy candy. Now, that cycasin toxin is water soluble. So, some of the Native Americans that used to live in Florida, they actually would harvest the coontie plant for the starch in the roots. And they had a way of flushing fresh water through this root starch as they pounded it with rocks and tools. And they had a way of washing that cycasin toxin out. And then they actually ate the flower. So that's one of the reasons why it was used by some of our Native Americans that were here. But then as more and more settlement occurred, the land where these coontie plants were originally found, they've been developed, and they're being grown now primarily in nurseries, and you're finding them in landscapes around buildings. So the coonties will have these aggregations of Atalas. So what will happen after that consumptive feeding stage, the Atala caterpillars will all migrate up to just a few leaflets of the Atala, of the coontie plant, and they will form aggregations. And then the research has actually shown that one chrysalis will produce a sound, and you see that little graph that's at the bottom of that slide. They've actually recorded the sound. I don't know where I have access to a recording of it, but they do have that graph there showing that it's recorded. And what they theorize is happening there, there's a hypothesis that they're actually synchronizing all the Atala chrysalis so they would emerge out all at the same time. So you're going to have a lot of Atala caterpillars, then you're going to have a lot of Atala chrysalis, and then you're going to have a lot of Atala emerging pretty much all at the same time. And then they have a tendency to disappear for a week or two. And then that life cycle goes and starts all over again. We started noticing them a little bit early this year. I started getting calls about them in February. And I think a lot of that just has to do with climate and proximity to water and so forth. This is what the dorsal view of the Atala butterfly looks like. So we have the male and the female. So they still have a little bit of iridescence to the wings, but they're not nearly as shiny, as showy as from the underside. And this, you see the underside of the Atala butterfly. One of the interesting things about their life cycle, the male Atala butterfly likes to have large places to perch. And ideally what you would want to have a patch of your coontie plants, and I guess it's self-advancing on me for some reason here. So you would have this patch of coontie plants, and then ideally you would have sea grapes or Eumaeus patens or some other plant that has large leaves kind of perched over the top of those coontie plants. And what will happen is the males will migrate up to those large leaves, and he'll produce his pheromones. He'll start having that float around in the air, and the females will come around, and then he'll just kind of take his turn mating with them. And then the females will go down below and will lay the eggs. And what you see in this picture is the male butterfly. This is the Atala butterfly, and he's actually producing his, they're called anal pencil hairs. And so what he'll do is he'll get on that sea grape leaf or the Eumaeus patens, or maybe even golden polypody fern. They will get, up on that perch, and then will extend out their abdomen. These anal pencil hairs, or they will emit out, and then he'll start flapping his wings, and the pheromones will start floating around in the air, and then the female comes up, and it's just a matter of the male finding the females, and the mating process begins. So in Fort Pierce, we first started noticing them in one location in the Fort Pierce Inlet State Recreation Area. This is the Atlantic coast, and we're about, I'd say about an hour and a half from Cape Canaveral, about an hour from West Palm Beach. And I started getting calls from the Fort Pierce Inlet State Park. They had coonties throughout the park over here, but we were only finding them on 2 patches. And if you look at the little pin drops, you'll see one pin drop at the entrance and then another pin drop on the inlet. And the Atala butterfly caterpillars were thriving at these 2 locations. And we actually had a lot of interest from the media, and people were coming to watch them. And we had groups of people just looking at these Atala butterflies. And we became interested in finding out, how prevalent are these Atala butterflies? Have they resurged in Florida? So in 2019, we did a survey, and we put the survey out on social media, and Master Gardeners, Master Naturalists helped with that. And we had some feedback. And you see here, we have probably about a dozen little stations identified where the Atala butterflies were located. And you can see all the way up from maybe Cape Canaveral, all the way down to the Jupiter area. And that's primarily where we were finding reports. But then you have this one little area on Naples, and that was a little bit of an outlier. And we suspect what happened there is the Atala butterfly caterpillars were transferred over to that area, and they're in a botanical garden there. We've also learned from Sandy Coy, who's done a lot of research on this, that they've transported some up to the Melbourne area, which is why we were getting a lot of reports. So this was 2019, and then we put the word out again, and this is what had happened. We had a lot of people respond back that we had coontie plants full of Atala butterfly caterpillars, and the adults were very prevalent. So, the success story is the Atala butterflies are there. The other success story is people love them. It's almost like a whale sighting or going to see sea turtles or something. When you know what you're looking at and you see how rare that Atala butterfly is and how at the brink of extinction they can be, it's really a delightful occurrence when you see these butterflies. And it's just a matter of educating people to make sure that they're here around for the next generations and into perpetuity. So you see that these butterflies are found primarily from Cape Canaveral all the way down. We had some in Miami, and then we had a couple of other occurrences in Collier County and Naples. My colleague Dan Colbert, I have to mention him, and Anne Marie Loveridge, I have to mention her. They are the 2 people that really inspired me to learn about the Atala butterfly and how wonderful their resurgence is in Florida. And we conducted Native Plant Society field days, and we had a lot of people come out, a lot of media exposure, and a lot of general interest. And then we have published some papers on this. I've given some professional conference presentations, and I've actually gone to the Florida State Horticulture Society conference, and I've gone to the American Society of Horticultural Sciences conferences, and I have talked to the experts about the Atala butterfly. So I'm doing my best to not only teach landscapers, to teach the general homeowners, but also other extension people and other professionals in the industry. So I'm attempting my best to teach them about the value of the Atala butterfly. And then we have poster exhibits that are available, and I have graphics packages that I'd be more than happy to send out to people, especially if you're with a nature center or maybe a botanical garden or an extension office. We can have these modified. We cannot print them for you, but I can send you the graphics packages, and we can work with you to get some posters. You have to just print them on your own. Oops. The other thing that we have are these conservation commitments. And we've had the expressed interest in Miami-Dade and Broward County. And it's not that they lost interest, it's just that when we were getting involved with them, the pandemic hit, and that kind of put the brakes on things, and we're starting to slowly ramp this up. But basically what this commitment is, it's an awareness of the Atala butterfly's rarity. It is an awareness of the essential nature of the coontie plant, and how having pollinators are beneficial to society in the form of good agricultural practices. So we have these conservation commitments that public organizations like botanical gardens and extension offices and other places, when they have these Atala butterflies on site, all they have to do is send me pictures and send me the location, and also just let me know what organization you're representing, and we can go ahead and come up with these conservation commitments. We have Fort Pierce Inlet State Recreation Area. They were our first organization to sign on to this commitment, and it was really fortuitous for us because their mission is conservation. So they were the first ones. They were natural partners with this. And one of the good things about Fort Pierce Inlet State Recreation Area is they're not using a lot of insecticides there. So we didn't have to worry about some of the mosquito control insecticides. We didn't have to worry about some landscape insecticide use. So pretty much it was a refugia for these butterflies at the Fort Pierce Inlet State Recreation Area. And we also learned that we had to retrain people. So we let the people know that run the Fort Pierce Inlet State Recreation Area, but we also have to have these reminders every year or two to remind them about the rarity of these butterflies and some of the practices that you need to employ in order to keep them there. Audubon of Martin County also stepped up. They're down in Stewart. And just last week, also down in Stewart, we have the IFAS Extension of Martin County. In Stewart, they have stepped up. They've got coontie plants with Atala butterflies. They had caterpillars down there, and I actually saw them. So they stepped up and they got their conservation commitment. And then next week, Tuesday, the Manatee Observation and Education Center, which is run by the Fort Pierce Utility Authority. They run the electrical utilities and other utilities there. Their board finances and manages the Manatee Observation Education Center. And we found a population of Atala butterflies actually at the Manatee Center. And their board is going to vote on this proclamation as an official proclamation that they adopt next week, Tuesday. So that will hopefully keep those butterflies safe at that location. And then of course, the University of Florida has plenty of information there on a lot of butterflies and some butterfly attracting plants. If you go to ifasbooks.ufl.edu, you can see some of these resources. And once again, this will be all available to you. One of the things about having slide presentations like this is if you want to capture some of this information, you can use your cell phone and actually take pictures of these slides. So, you know, if you're going to do that, you might want to have your camera handy just to take pictures of some of this information. And then we've also got some information about monarch butterflies, and we've got a few ID decks such as this. Also information about attracting hummingbirds and butterfly gardening. So for additional information, you can go on our EDIS website, and Florida Coonties and Atala Butterflies fact sheet is there, and the Atala Butterfly fact sheet is there. And then we also have a UF featured creatures. And in summary, the Atala butterflies are still rare and imperiled. So I have that question mark there. If people are not actively managing these, or if they're not actively conserving Atala butterflies, they still are at threat for extinction. So it's a matter of building awareness of the needs of these Atala butterflies, and then, just teaching others how to conserve them. And then public entities with Atala on site can proclaim their commitment to conserve them. Special thanks to Shelly Johnson. So I always appreciate the opportunity to work with Shelly. She was my partner at the, for several years now. She's been a partner through the Florida Master Naturalist Program, and now she is our state specialized natural resource extension agent. So that was a very nice transition that we had for Shelly, so we can still keep in touch with her, and she does wonderful stuff for us statewide. And then we also have Kate Rotundo, which is St. Lucie County's urban horticulture agent. Now this is Kate in this picture, and she was actually doing a Facebook Live presentation at the Manatee Observation and Education Center, and she was talking about friendly landscaping. And as they're shooting this live camera, this live event, the Atala butterflies were flying around her. So she's very much like me. And when you see something, I guess we call it the shiny squirrel event. So if you see something kind of shiny and magnificent like that, she just wanted to chase after the Atala butterflies, just like I would want to. But she kind of held it together, and she was just watching the butterflies fly around her. So you can see that there's that shade tree over her. So that was a Hamelia patens. We call that firebush as a common name. That's where the males were doing that mating ritual, where they were getting their abdomen pushed forward with those anal pencil hairs sticking out and emitting the pheromones in the air. And then the coontie plants were down below, and the females were there. I did get a call from the Manatee Center. They were concerned that all of the coontie plants were being chewed up. So I just reassured them that that's part of the natural cycle. These Atala butterfly caterpillars, they're basically in a rush to out-eat each other. They're in competition for food, and they will literally strip every branch off of those coontie plants. But the coontie plants will come back. So it's a matter of just educating the people who see this to let them know that the coontie plant will come back. And of course, I need to recognize Sally Scalera. She is my colleague up in Brevard County Extension, up in Cocoa Beach. And she did a newspaper article a year and a half, 2 years ago. And we had, 50 or 60 people contact us with sightings for Atala butterflies just from her one article. And then Sandy Coy, she is actually working on a PhD right now at Florida International University. And she is my go-to person when I need to have answers on Atala butterflies. I am not an entomologist by trade. I am an extension agent. I know about a lot of stuff out there. And when I need to have some more in-depth information, I go to somebody like Sandy Coy, who knows a lot of in-depth, because she's done most of the research on these particular insects. And then I also have to call out my colleague, Dan Culver. He retired from Extension probably about 10 years ago or so, maybe 15 years ago. And he's the one that introduced me to these butterflies all those years ago. This is my contact information. And with that, I'm going to stop my share screen. And Shelly, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And I think you're going to do some stuff.
Yes, thank you, Ken. That was very informative. We do have some questions, and we'll go through those in a second. And if you have other questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we're going to run through those. And just really, before we move on to the questions, I do want to share my own personal story really quick, because it is near and dear to my heart. About 2 months ago, my dog ate some coontie palm seeds because she thinks they're candy. So I just need to give a little PSA. Please, if you're going to plant coontie palm, which you should because it's native and it's beautiful and animals need it and butterflies need it, you just make very sure that you're not planting it where pets or small children might accidentally ingest it thinking that it's candy. I don't think you showed a picture of the beautiful, once the cone opens up, there's these beautiful orange seeds. They look like bright orange, giant, like corn kernels. And I know in my, in Gainesville, I live in Gainesville, and the city parks have been great about planting natives, which is commendable, and I pat them on the back for that. But they plant, coontie palm along all the sidewalks, and you see kids playing with them. And now, I walk my dog, and I have to, avoid the sidewalk, which is like, so just be really cautious.
Shelly, one interesting thing about those seed pods, if you think about it, the color of those seed pods is bright red, right? So we know that nature has certain warning colors. Doesn't work for birds, but we know that with butterflies, if you have black and white stripes, if you have bright yellow and bright red, those are danger signals. So right there, it's warning that Atala butterfly is toxic. And the color of the abdomen is just about the same color of those seed pods. So, I kind of wonder, is that coevolution right there? It just kind of makes
we've definitely, our pets and our children have definitely lost any natural instinct to avoid toxic things. But yeah, I mean, just be aware. And I kind of wish the nurseries would at least have a tiny little warning saying, by the way, these are toxic, just to be aware of where you're planting them. So just keep that in mind. And I'm going to post a link on there too. But so let's answer some questions. I will go through them. We had a question first from Melina. How long can I wait to release an Atala butterfly after it has emerged? If, for example, if it is storming outside?
I don't think I would wait. In fact, I don't think I would actually collect them. I would just let nature take its course. These butterflies have been here for a very long time, and they have ways of protecting themselves. They'll get deep into shrubbery and bushes. I just don't think that I would, collect them before a storm. I would just kind of have, let nature take its course. So if you did collect them, just kind of get them out like as soon as possible.
Okay, a question from Marlene. I thought coontie had white fly, and I was spraying it with tea tree oil. Do they get white fly, or was it eggs?
No, more than likely it was a white fly that you saw there. And just keep in mind that when you use insecticides to treat your white fly, you might also inadvertently be killing off your Atala butterfly caterpillars.
Okay, thank you. A question from Bridget. Can you tell us, in that host plant / caterpillar relationship, is there any advantage conveyed to the plant by the caterpillar?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of any benefit. Certainly the Atala butterfly benefits from the cycasin, but really it's the plant itself has to produce a lot of energy to regrow the leaves that have been chewed up. So I would say it's probably not, a benefit to the coontie plant.
Okay, Susan wants to know if the sea grape does the sea grape have to be directly above the coontie plant or just in close proximity?
So I would say close proximity. And we noticed at the Porter's Inlet State Recreation Area, there was a sea grape tree that was within about 30 feet or 40 feet of the coontie plants. And the males were just up in those, up in that sea grape tree. So I think the closer, the better. But then, I say that, and then nature has a way of kind of throwing wrenches in things. So nature kind of does what it wants to do. When we were at the Manatee Center, the Atala butterflies, this is just an example of how picky these Atalas are. The coontie plants that were on the side, on the oceanward side, the Indian River Lagoon side of the Manatee Center, those coontie plants were being actively chewed on by the Atala butterflies, the caterpillars. But if you go to the landward side, those particular coonties weren't even touched at all. So, there's still a lot that we don't know. Was it a matter of climate? Was it a matter of the Atalas not finding it for some reason? Was there insecticide control, maybe mosquito control or insecticide use along the roadway, which kept those Atala butterflies from establishing close to the road. So there was a lot of questions that I have about it. But there you go.
Next question, why do they stay near the coast?
Down in Miami, Boca, and Palm Beach, and down in Jupiter, we have had some reports of them about 10 miles inland. So I think what's happening down in areas, especially down in South Florida, extreme South Florida, I think what's happening is you're dealing with a climate issue. And if you also think about the Atala butterfly, if they're in a pocket on the coast and they're living on the coontie, maybe at a preserve on the beach, and if you have coontie inland, maybe at a nursery, a plant nursery or something, or maybe even at a state park, that area between the state park and the developments, that's almost an insurmountable chemical barrier for these Atala butterflies. Think about all the mosquito control practices, all the insecticide use that's taking place in those communities between the coast and an inland nursery or botanical garden or something. That might be insurmountable for those butterflies to establish inland. So I suspect that when we have some of these butterflies that are found inland, is because people have carried them there. When I'm in St. Lucie County, when I'm working with some homeowners associations and so forth, they always ask me, well, what if we carry Atala butterflies to a community that's 10 miles inland? My response to them is, if Atalas are not there on their own, more than likely there's a reason for it. And, you can certainly try, just make sure you're not, trespassing and going into state parks, removing organisms from state parks, because that, of course, is illegal to do.
All right, thanks. A couple other questions about range. So someone asked, what was their natural range before disappearance? And then kind of along with that, what will they naturally range all of South Florida or only the East Coast?
Pretty much they were only here on the Southeast Florida coast and in the Caribbean islands. So the areas that we had in that map that I showed earlier, that would have been the area that we would expect to find them. Now down in Miami-Dade, they have the Pine Rocklands areas, and it's high, dry area. It's one of the few places that are left for development. And unfortunately, we're losing some land down there and the coontie that were there. So, development is still ongoing and it's still a threat to these butterflies. Hey, Shelly, I'm going to put I'm going to put my post test in the chat. Do you think that's a good time for me to do it?
So let me go ahead and launch the poll first.
Okay.
So I'm going to launch.
We'll answer a few more
we have more questions. We have plenty of questions to still answer, but I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. If everyone can just take 1 minute and answer these few questions. And then after that, we're going to put a link to another evaluation that you can go to and respond. We would appreciate it. So while people are answering that, there was a comment related to the range. Someone saying they found some near Naples.
Yeah, so we had a few reporting. We had them at the Collier County government building there and the Naples Botanical Garden. So if you're down in the Naples area, you might want to take a look at the botanical gardens down in Naples. Here in St. Lucie County, we have them at Heathcote Botanical Gardens. We've got them at Port St. Lucie Botanical Gardens and at the Manatee Center down in Stewart. You can go down to Martin County Audubon. So they're out and about. They're located in areas around the state, around Southeast Florida primarily, but then that one little outlier out in Collier County and in Manatee.
Someone asked that they would like the Atala caterpillars stripped the coonties in their yard in Orlando. Are there any odds of that?
If they're there, it would be surprising to me, but I would not be surprised at all about these butterflies. Nature it has a will, there's a way, So if these butterflies are able to get there, and if they're able to make it from a coastal area through all the chemical soup where all the insecticides are used, to an area in your neighborhood, maybe a park or a preserve in your neighborhood, that's great. Just keep in mind that if you're carrying them to your home, you might actually be, doing a disservice to the butterfly, because you might be taking them from a place where they're thriving on the coast and bringing them inland to a place where they might be very isolated and maybe won't survive after a generation.
John asked, what is the optimal plant for feeding them?
I'm assuming that that's going to be for the adults. I personally like Biden's alba. That's one of those butterfly plants that it's one of those inconspicuous little roadside weeds that, we call it tick seed, Spanish needles, another name. Some of these little weedy plants are just plants that these butterflies absolutely love. So I will pick some of that. I will plant some seeds of that. And we know they're probably going to do well pretty much throughout Central and South Florida.
Okay, so I ended the poll, Ken. So if you want to, Ken's gonna paste in the chat another evaluation for his own use for his reporting of what you learned today. So if you want to go ahead and go to that link when we're done here or now and answer those questions, that would be great. And we'll answer some more questions while we have a few more minutes here.
Sure.
Bridget asked if my dog made it. She did. Yes, thank you for asking. 2 days in the ER, about $1,000 vet bill, and she's still on liver protector, and that was 2 months ago. There's less than a 50% survival rate, even with quick and serious supportive care. So it's definitely not something that you want your dog eating.
Shelly, when I was
not a small dog, she's 45 pounds. She's got a stomach of steel. Otherwise, I think she wouldn't have fared so well.
When I was looking up some of the signs and symptoms of cycastin poisoning, it's pretty horrific. It sounds like first of all, any sort of death by plant is bad, but this sounds like it was particularly toxic. First of all, it didn't take a lot to do it. And then it's just a very nasty way to go, I guess.
Yeah, so mostly there's 2 toxins. One is causing liver damage and one can cause neurological damage. But so yeah, best not to be ingested by anyone. So Alex has a question. I'm in Southwest Florida where the Atala is spreading. What are the concerns related to this butterfly expanding its range beyond its historic range, since there are no records of it living in the Southwest coast until recently?
So I think right now it's just a matter of educating people on that coast. And the more people you tell about the rarity of these Atala butterflies, I think the better off the butterfly will establish over on the West Coast. And you might run into a little bit of reluctance from people that need to have that perfectly manicured lawn. Just let them know that they're going to get this butterfly if they've got it on site. But if they use the insecticides to kill off the caterpillars, the butterflies are just not going to be prevalent there. They're just going to go away.
Rebecca asked how to tell the male versus the female apart. If you can.
You know what? I had a slide on that. A little bit of a difference in coloration. So let me see if I can find that really fast here. One was a little bit bluer, a little bit greener. Let's see if I can find that. Do I still have share screen permissions?
Yes.
Okay, so let me put that back up really fast. So you see a little bit of a difference in the coloration, a little bit bluer, a little bit greener in one. And that's pretty much it.
So the female's actually darker, or was that just the photo?
It was a little bit darker.
Okay. Someone asked, don't they prefer the shade?
Oh, they do like the shade, but if you think about it, they're going to be in the shade of one of these large leaf plants that the males will be perched on. So, if you have a sea grape near your coontie patch and your coontie has the caterpillars on it, then you're probably going to have a lot of adult males perching on the leaves and the females kind of getting up underneath all of that. So at the Manatee Center, they had a Eumaeus patens that was probably about 15 feet tall. It was a pretty tall one. It was almost a small tree. And when you look at that particular Eumaeus patens, it was, you know, the butterflies were all over it. They were getting into that shady patch, and they had just the perfect combination of shady patch, large leaf tree with the coontie nearby, and the butterflies really liked that relationship.
Susan asked, what about salt spray on the coontie as an attractant to the Atala?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of hold off on that because I've had some people say that one of the things that might keep them hugging the coastline is the presence of salt spray. And I have yet to see research that shows that that's one of the determining factors. But if you look at Southeast Florida and where we're seeing these butterflies popping up, they're all fairly close to the Indian River Lagoon, the Intercoastal Waterway, or the ocean. But then, you know, I say that and you go down to some place like Jupiter and they're in the middle of a neighborhood. So, yeah, I'm not sure if it benefits them. I think we just need to have a little bit more research done on that.
Some more comments about butterflies near Naples, near the botanical gardens, and near the Conservatory of Southwest Florida in Naples. Someone asked, is there any downside to the spread of the Atala to new areas?
Well, the only downside is that these butterflies will be eating up your coontie plants. So, you know, if you need to have that perfectly manicured lawn, for those people that need to have that, they might consider that to be a downside. But personally, if I had them in my backyard, and I don't, but if I did have them in my backyard, they would be more than happy there to have them there. I wouldn't care one bit if they were chewing up my coontie plants. But I think that would be the only concern. That would be, you know, whether or not somebody would have coontie that were being chewed up.
And so Alex asked, regarding my previous question, they're moving north along the southwest coast toward Tampa, far outside their natural range, which relates back to my question, what are the dangers of this butterfly essentially acting as an exotic species outside their natural range?
Oh, I see. So no, they're endemic to Southeast Florida. And I would say that I personally would not call them an invasive species. I wouldn't do that because they belong in Florida. It's just that their natural range is just extending. And a lot of that is by movement that people are doing. You know, people see them, you know, in a location and then they want them in their backyard. So they'll collect those Atala caterpillars and then they'll move them to the backyard. So, you know, we saw that up in the Melbourne area, Melbourne, Cocoa Beach. So, you know, people have moved these insects.
And there's kind of a little conversation going about the echo moth butterflies also using coontie.
Okay, now I was not aware of that. Now there is another butterfly that looks almost exactly like the Florida Atala, and that is the purple hairstreak. So if you're in an inland area and you see what looks like an Atala butterfly, but when you look closer, it's got a little hairstreak, little tail wing. That would be that purple hairstreak. And their caterpillar food source of all things is mistletoe. So if you see them maybe clinging to the side of a wall and you think it's an Atala, well, look closely. And if it's got that little appendage on its wing, look at the trees nearby, and more than likely you're going to see a ball of mistletoe, and that's probably where it was going. I have one on the back wall here at the extension office where I work, and I'm 10 miles inland, and I just about had a heart attack when I saw it. And then I looked closer, and it was the purple hairstreak.
Pat made a comment that I appreciate. Says if something isn't eating your plants, you aren't part of the ecosystem.
I know I eat plants.
I should
eat more plants.
Tina asks, what has been done to curb ongoing efforts to further develop native areas in our state? Well, it's a good question. What success have we had in getting our state government to adopt measures to protect at-risk species? It's one thing to disseminate information and raise awareness, and it's something altogether different to make our legislatures understand and agree to help on this issue. Raising awareness without expecting a tangible improvement is futile at best.
Okay, so one thing that I have to say that in Extension, we're educators. We are not people out there that are making the laws. But what we can do is we can teach the viewers and the audience and let all of you make your own determinations. Then it's up to you to recommend a course of action to your legislators. So, we are not necessarily advocates in Extension, we are educators. So, kind of keep that in mind. Also, I guess I shouldn't say all politics, but a lot of politics are local. So here in St. Lucie County, we've got a lot of urbanization that's occurring. But about 15 to 20 years ago, the citizens of St. Lucie County joined together and they actually voted on a tax referendum that they're going to get, I think it was like a 0.5% sales tax or something. And what that enabled the government to do was to buy up some conservation lands. And they did that. And those conservation lands are right now in perpetuity for generations to come. So, politics are local, but then certainly on a larger scale, it can be statewide and even national and international. But we can have a lot of impact locally. Just get to know your city council members, your county commissioners, and so forth, and express your interest to them. If they don't hear from you, they're not going to do anything for you.
And we just have a couple more questions. If anyone has any others, go ahead and put them in the chat now, but we'll just wrap up with these last couple questions if there aren't others. John asked, how does the caterpillar not get poisoned by eating the coontie?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. They're just adapted to impound that cycasin toxin in their bodies, and that's just the way that they have kind of evolved.
I think birds too can eat them, and birds eat a lot of toxic things, and they're just not as susceptible to them.
Yeah, I would say that birds aren't eating the coontie or the Atala caterpillar. They're just not eating it.
Well, that was the other question. What about songbirds treat? Oh, well, maybe not. Wait. Bob at the Conservancy asked, what about songbirds treating the butterfly as prey and being killed by the toxin?
Well, songbirds pretty much figure this stuff. Nature has a way of knowing these things. So, like Shelly and I had talked earlier, when you have caterpillars that are bright red, bright yellow, like the Atala caterpillars are, birds will generally learn to stay away from them. So that's just how nature works. Black and white striping, if you think of nature, you've got raccoons that have, the black and white striping on the tail. They'll also have that band around their eyes. That's an indicator that that's a potentially dangerous animal. So, nature has these ways of flashing, warning, danger, stay away, except with coloration in birds, which they have their coloration because of mating.
All right, and then there's a comment about just a suggestion if people want to get involved with foundations that organize lobbying, like the Audubon, Everglades Foundation, other Florida national or local organizations that may be involved with advocacy. So.
Yeah, we had Martin County Audubon. They adopted the Atala proclamation, and they're thrilled. They're very happy to have the Atala butterflies on their site. They could take people on field trips to those plants.
And I'll just another reminder, if you didn't answer the survey at the link, go ahead and do that. And then otherwise, we'll wrap it up for today. I do want to remind everyone that next month in May, on May 20th, the topic will be climate change relating to summer weather and hurricanes. That'll be presented by Libby Carnahan, who's a Florida Sea Grant agent with Extension in Pinellas County. And then in June, we'll be talking about saving seagrass for the savory scallops. So tune back in June if you want to hear about that. So both of those programs, the registration link is active for those at this point. So you can go ahead and register and you will get the confirmation email with the link to join when that time comes around. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you very much, Ken. That was a very informative, and I think everyone got their questions answered and learned a little bit about what they can do to help the Atala butterfly. And I really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks, Shelly. And in the behind the scenes, we had Haley Hansen working the Facebook and all the inner workings of the Zoom stuff. So thank you to Haley working in the background. And I was very happy to see some of my former students in the audience, Susan Hamburger, Vivian Lorianne, some others, Pam. So I'm glad that I saw some familiar faces. And thank you very much for inviting me here.